Welcome to the Asking Why podcast. I'm your host, Clint Davis, and we're back for the new year. This is our first episode back for the new year. And we had some heavy hitters at the end of the year that were really good, that just conversations from last year that just really impacted you guys, listeners, culture. I've gotten great feedback from people. And so I'd reached out to Lisa, and we have emailed back and forth, and she does some incredible things with yoga, with kids, mindfulness. And so I just wanted to have her on today in hopes that we were talking about this a little bit before we started, in hopes that anybody out there listening can just get a different perspective on kids and school and the importance of movement. And so Lisa, thank you so much for coming on.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and how you got into doing what you do.
Sure. I've been working with kids for a very long time. In fact, even before I officially worked with kids, some of my friends joked when I worked at a law firm that I was working with big kids. And when I went to run a preschool, I decided to work with little kids. So I've been in the field of education for about 35 years now. And in my work in education way back in the 90s, I was noticing a real lack of social emotional skill building for little ones. I was running a preschool. So I had a personal practice of yoga and mindfulness and started to wonder how we could maybe bring that into the school a little bit more. Certainly the teachers needed it. Certainly the kids needed it. So I eventually brought in some friends of mine to teach some yoga classes with the kids. And as we did that, I started to notice these profound shifts in the school culture. I started noticing that not only were the children able to minimize their tantrums, their emotional dysregulation, but teachers were a lot more steady too. And there was so much more collaboration and cooperation. And it was just awesome. And so it grew from there, and I ended up eventually leaving the preschool, getting my training in yoga therapy. I have a master's in yoga therapy, and heading out to bring these practices to more kids and the grown-ups in their lives all around the world.
Yeah, and you recently wrote a book, right? How old is the book now?
Book's about a year old.
Okay,
Still a baby.
So creating calm in your classroom, right?
Yeah. And that book pays homage to my roots in the early childhood classroom, and it's designed to bring social emotional learning skills to children and schools, but it applies to anybody. What space isn't a classroom, right? We're always learning and growing. So it's got lots of really, really good practical tools in it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was doing a talk yesterday to a bunch of school counselors, and I was saying, children can't learn if they don't feel safe, and they can't feel safe if they're not in their bodies and if they're not regulated. And so I thought that was, knowing we were going to do this podcast, I was like, man, this is going to be a great conversation tomorrow. I think, people are just really in our kind of industrial complex of school and learning and sitting in a desk for 8 hours a day. They forget how much movement for a child really is needed. It helps regulate them. It helps get their nervous system under control. And it doesn't take a whole lot. While I was doing the talk yesterday, I made everybody stand up and kind of move back and forth on their toes and sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And I was just trying to show them, that one, it regulates you, and two, it took all of like 1 minute to do it. And so in schools, people think they need, I can't do a whole 30-minute thing, or we don't have time for it. But if you could take a little bit of time every, class period or at the end of every class period, man, that can make such an impact. So what do you teach? What are kind of your favorite things to go in and teach schools that you've seen be very impactful?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things we've noticed is, like you said, it's got to be fit into the regular routine, right? This isn't one more thing. This isn't an add-on. This is part of our culture in a classroom. And so what we focus on a lot of times with teachers is transitions. How are we bringing the kids into the classroom? How are we all coming together as a group in our morning meeting? How are we moving to our specials activities? Or how are we coming into a math exercise or reading or whatever the academic piece is? So we find ways to plant these tools throughout the whole school day. And we
Mm,
always make sure that there's some little piece at the end of the day because we know our little kiddos are going to leave their classrooms and go back out into that big real world.
that's
And
right.
you made a really valuable point that I think folks really should pay attention to, and that is that in order for us to accurately interpret our world and our social positioning, how we're doing, whether we are connected and in healthy attachments,
Hmm.
we need to feel safe. And when we're in a constant state of stress, a constant state of hyper vigilance, we can't accurately interpret our world. So even when we're in a safe place like a classroom, if so much of our lives we're not feeling steady,
Hmm.
then teachers are going to have to work even harder in the classrooms to help us to feel grounded, to feel steady, to feel secure, so that we can accurately interpret when that teacher smiles at us, that they really do love us and that they're not, showing their teeth and ready to bite us.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the lens in which a lot of these kids see the world through is not the lens in which we would like them to. And if we don't slow things down and prioritize their health and their nervous system regulation, they're not going to be able to hear and see the things that we're trying to teach them. And, you know, teachers and parents can get really they're dysregulated themselves because here they are being kind, here they are trying to be safe, here they are trying to be compassionate, and yet the child is receiving, not what they're intending to give. And then they get defensive and they're like, why don't you appreciate this? Or I'm safe. And it's like, man, you've got to slow things way down and realize that this kid has not experienced that. And this might be the first time that they're experiencing it. And they're not going to trust you right off the bat.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think is happening with a lot of relationships with children now is we're trying to talk them to death.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to talk them through everything. Tell me how you feel. I see that you're feeling this way. That's
Mm-hmm.
even more intrusive because now you're trying to label how a kid is feeling and they might not feel the same way or be able
That's
to
right.
to match it. And so I what I like to do is shift the perspective for teachers and parents from trying to talk through everything and label everything to reading the room, to reading the energy.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way I can describe that is, have you ever been in a really good mood and, you're feeling really pretty happy and steady and life is good, and you walk into a room full of people and there's something going on in there and it feels so dissonant, right? It feels just so disconnected from you. But what ends up happening is it can start to cause you to question how you feel
Mm-hmm.
and to with your mirror neurons telling you no one out there is acting the same as you, for your mirror neurons to suggest that you change your behavior and that
Mm-hmm.
you to this other behavior. So you've followed the flow of the energy, not even necessarily what's really happening. You've picked up on the energy. I used to have that happen all the time. I would walk into a classroom and everybody, teachers were and kids were crying, and I would just start to take some deep breaths. And I was the co regulator. I was the one bringing the source of steadiness. And I'd look at the teachers and we'd start to breathe together. And before you knew it, all the kids were in there with us and we had all calmed down. So I
Mm-hmm.
have the power as the co regulator to ramp everybody up or to drop everybody too far or to bring them to that just sweet spot.
That's great. Yeah, and for people listening, co-regulation and self-regulation are things that we try to teach people, through therapy, through yoga, through meditation. And as adults, ultimately we're responsible for self-regulation. Ultimately, yes, co-regulation can happen, but the real strength in being a mature adult is being able to regulate yourself when you walk into a situation and the energy's off and people are dysregulated and oh my gosh, what is going on? And instead of letting that external thing work you up, get you in fight or flight, get you feeling unsafe and dysregulated, but taking a deep breath, right? Naming that feeling, naming what's going on for you, paying attention to what you want to do. I want to leave. I want to shut down. I want to start over talking, whatever the thing is. And then, reminding yourself what's true and speaking, that regulating truth to yourself is so, so important. But kids, they actually work through co-regulation. they need adults that are regulated to regulate. They need you to come in. They don't have the same ability and skill. And so I love that what you're saying is like, learning to walk into a room and be able to feel, first, even just be aware enough to see that things are different. So many people just kind of live their life in fight or flight constantly that they're not even paying attention to the energy.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it took me many, many years to recognize that, and
Same.
I am still working on it.
But
You
yeah,
know,
we all are. We're all a work in progress.
absolutely. We're wired to belong and connect, and in that wiring, we tend to go, well, maybe I should be like them. But you're right, as the adult in the experience, if I am in non-critical spaces, practicing bringing myself back to a centered state, then when I get into that dysregulated space, chances are I'm going to be able to access my regulation capacity and keep myself steady and be able to, like you said, use internal markers instead of external markers as to what's going on and where I am.
Yeah, we're Western Americans. We're so removed from our bodies. In therapy, I'll ask somebody, well, I see that on your face, or where's that at in your body, or where do you feel that grief, or where do you feel that pain? And they're like, nobody's ever asked them that in their life. And it's so sad to me because you're a whole body. God has made you mind, body, and spirit. And I think that if we can teach people to get back in their bodies, but they're comfortable with the dysregulation. They don't want to get back in their bodies because they're using their phones, they're using drugs and alcohol, they're using sugar and food and sex and everything else to stay out of their bodies so they don't have to deal with the pain. So can you talk a little bit about when you help people get back into their bodies with yoga or meditation or some of these practices, especially kids? What's that like, and what's your way of kind of helping them?
Yeah, I'll share with you. I originally studied psychology in undergraduate, and my plan was actually to go into being a psychotherapist. And one thing led to the other, and I went into human resource management instead. And then after working at the school, I knew I wanted to do something more in the counseling capacity. And one of the reasons I chose yoga therapy, I had been a yoga teacher for about 10 years before I became a yoga therapist, actually more than 10 years. But I became a yoga therapist for the exact reason you're talking about, the somatic access. And in yoga therapy, the model of the therapeutic model is sometimes called top down and bottom up. And what that means is we can either access a very intellectual, mind-oriented space and work our way into feeling the body, or if we're really feeling the body and not so much able to connect to the thoughts, bottom up. And both of those tracks, they involve the nervous system and being able to access the nervous system. So one of the easiest ways to access your nervous system is through your breath. When I breathe in, when I breathe out, I'm able to either activate or relax through my nervous system. And so our critical entry point is breath, that very subtle connection that allows me to help you figure out, am I a mind person and my body person? Most folks are stuck in their thoughts. And so yoga therapy gives you a chance to feel through your body and then process. And so I think you're right. I think we don't move enough. I think when we move, it's in response, in reaction, not very often playful and for fun. And so I think that if through yoga therapy, one of the joys I've had in helping people is I get them moving, I get them feeling their bodies and feeling the power they have in controlling how they feel through their bodies, in moving their breath, and in developing the connection between the mind and body.
That's awesome. I love the picture of the lungs you have on the wall there. Yeah, those are things that are great. I mean, it's a beautiful picture of that breath work that we all need to be doing. That's something else I got the teachers, put their hand on their stomach yesterday, and I was telling them to breathe, so they can feel it lift from their stomach. And afterwards, after taking 3 deep breaths, I felt a little lightheaded. I was like, does anybody feel like they're going to pass out? And people are like, yes. I'm like, that's because you're a chest breather. You're breathing all up here all day. You don't even realize that that's what you're doing. And you're not getting that full access to the oxygen and oxytocin and all those things.
Yeah, there's a book that you're probably familiar with called Waking the Tiger by Peter
Mm-hmm.
Levine.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about the fact that our stress response is the same, whether it's a response to a physical danger or perceived intellectual danger, something in our mind. And what he did was he was able to take people and reproduce a stress response, physical stress response. For example, let's say you're uncomfortable going into public places. So I would have you run on a treadmill with me so I could figure out your optimal heart rate when your body was physically exerting itself, when
Mm-hmm.
you were having stress, right? You were breathing heavier, you were sweating a little. And then I would walk you back from the entrance to a mall because you're uncomfortable going into that public space. And I would have you exert yourself physically, like a 50-yard dash, run up to the front doors. And you would develop all of the tightness in your chest and all of the sweating, all the things that feel just like that emotional response. The emotional response is the same if I'm anxious
Mm-hmm.
or I'm running. But when you get to the door because you stopped running, your body says, oh, no more risk. We don't run anymore. And when you calm down, it relaxes the whole body and allows you to face that that emotional trigger in a different way. It
That's
allows you to
great.
release the emotional stress. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what yoga's doing. So if I go to my yoga mat and I move and I move and I move and I challenge myself and I feel tension and I feel frustration and I feel all this stuff and I work through it, then what I'm doing is teaching myself to be able to identify the physiological signs of any kind of stress and to have a means for redirecting them, diffusing them, or sometimes, don't get me wrong, stress response is a good thing. Sometimes that alert that there's danger is necessary and I do need to run.
Sure.
And sometimes I do need to make a change. But I think for the most part, what hangs us up is this not recognizing that the physiological symptoms that we're experiencing are from a perceived threat that may or may not be there or may or may not still be there.
That's
And
right.
so finding a way to access those same symptoms through the body can help us feel that we have more capacity to control it when
That's
it's an
good.
emotional.
Yeah, I call that the bunny or the bear. You're in the woods and there's a bear. You should have a stress response. If you're in the woods and there's a bunny, we've got something going on. And the reality is most of us respond to bunnies as if they're bears, until we practice and we get in that moment. I love that what you're saying about running up to the door. It's such a great, somatic way of treating trauma and helping people recover from those exposures and things. I don't know if you've read anything about us, but I do jujitsu, which I love, and we call it murder yoga. But it's a lot of similarities between doing yoga and jujitsu, and the breathing and the staying calm and the putting yourself in positions that are difficult. And I've done yoga too and love it. But yeah, it's like whether it's emotionally or relationally or physically, when you practice stress inoculation and you put your body into difficult situations and put your heart rate in difficult situations that are safe, and then kind of learn your limit and learn where you're at and learn to breathe through it and learn that you're going to be okay and learn that you can overcome it. Then when you get out in the world and there's actual things going on, those things are pretty easy. You have the same skill set to be able to take a breath and I'll go, my hands are sweaty. I'm gritting my teeth. I'm gripping my fists. I'm rubbing my thighs. Like I'm doing these things that are letting me know and indicating that I'm nervous. All right, hold on. I can take 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute, and get this nervous system under control. And it's amazing just how little bit of time and energy doing that can reset everything.
Yeah, and I want to point out too that the reason the movement is so important is because it's also tuning your body. I know a lot of my colleagues and friends do a lot of breath work, and breath work is super awesome. It's super it can very quickly change nervous system states. It can very quickly change moods, and it certainly accesses the circulatory and respiratory systems. But when I move
Mm-hmm.
and my movement does that, I'm also squeezing the muscles along the lymph nodes and in improving my immune system functioning. I am moving synovial fluids, the lubrication in the joints. I am building muscle tone. I am strengthening bones. And what that's doing is making it so that I have a healthier carriage
Mm-hmm.
so that when I notice those stressors, I am in a physically stronger state to face them.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that we're trying to bypass movement in a lot of what we're doing. What's the quickest way to neutralize my feeling? What's the quickest way to regulate? Yes, the breath is. But the reality is, the more you're moving, the more you're in tune to your body and you're in tune to what's going on and able to shift it
Yeah, it's
and
so good.
notice like the muscle tension, right?
Yeah, well, we live in a society where we have to go to the gym and lift heavy things to have muscles because we don't get outside and do anything. So, it's crazy that we're so industrialized and we're so comfortable physically, that obesity is one of the number one killers in our world, and heart disease. And yeah, you're right. I said this earlier today, but everybody wants muscles, but nobody wants to lift weights. Everybody wants to be calm and not be anxious and not be depressed, but so we take a pill. And again, I'm not anti-medication, but so many things can be treated with getting outside, going for a run, going for a walk, stretching, doing some yoga, breathing, and not in 7 hours, in 20 minutes in the morning. And I think people just feel like they have to do, it's New Year's resolution. The gyms are going to be filled this month, and in February it's going to be crickets. So it's like people get overwhelmed with the idea of eating that whole elephant in one bite. And it's like, man, just take a few moments in the morning, 10 minutes to move around, to dance, to, do some yoga, to do some meditation, to do some breath work, to go outside, and it can change your entire day and life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I packaged my book. There are 30 movements in the book, and the movements are categorized by sort of where they help you in terms of raising or lowering your energy and how you reconnect. And in each of these 6 sections is a breathing, 3 movements, and a
Oh,
meditation.
that's great.
You can package them together or take them singularly. But with all of them, they involve breath work. Some of them involve sounding, and they all involve some form of movement. And that movement, it can be very quick and some of these 30 seconds, 1 minute, they can be done on their own. And what I love about them is there's something called Wolf's Law.
Okay.
And it's about a 30-year-old research finding around dynamic tensioning and mechanical leveraging,
Okay.
ways we move and how they support bone health and muscular and postural structure. So, according to Wolff's Law, we need to engage in things that are weight bearing, which is that dynamic tensioning that
Mm-hmm.
causes our muscles to hold on, and mechanical leveraging, which is the flexibility, this mobilization of,
Mm-hmm.
side and reaching up and overhead. And so the movements in this book are all intended to engage dynamic tensioning and mechanical leveraging in super powerful spurts so that you're not only getting the toning of the body, the engagement of many of the physiological systems, because a lot of it even ties to digestion, but you're also getting this proprioceptive and vestibular connection of senses beyond your 5 senses. So they're like super powerful little nuggets that you can just pop in. And like you said, it doesn't take long.
Mm-hmm.
It
No,
take
it
long.
doesn't. I love that. I love that. That's a good tie-in to, the time of the year it is where people can just take these little chunks of time to be mindful, to do some breathing, to do some exercise. And 2026 December is coming. And I think people need to remember they just need to do a little bit at a time every day, and if they miss a day, do it the next day, do it the afternoon, and don't try to do 27 hours worth of things all in one chunk. So if somebody's listening to this and they're like, man, I love these ideas. I'm a yoga teacher, or I'm a yoga therapist. What are some ways you can encourage them in working with their communities to get this into schools and to, get a program going?
Well, they can call me. They can text me, message me. I'd be happy to help them out. That's one of the things I do spend a lot of my time with, is helping folks spread the work. But I'd say the first thing to do is, if they've got their own really solid practice, come at it from their own voice, right? What
Mm-hmm.
is this doing for me? What do I feel? What do I want to share? And from there, start offering opportunities for people to practice with you. I don't feel like yoga in particular, there's this thinking that it should just be given away.
Mm,
So I'm not saying, go and give it away for free, but I think if you can model it, if you can share it and bring the resources. My book in the classrooms is a great way to,
mm-hmm.
to have something, a tool. But I'd say practice it. I tell the teachers I train, I say, you have to feel it to know it to teach it,
Mm-hmm.
and teach it to grow it.
That's right. I like that. Well, thank you so much for that. That's great. I mean, great advice, great, reminder of how important it is to be in our body and to be able to process these things. Any closing thoughts or, feedback that you'd have, or that something you wanted to talk about or dive into?
I'd love to do a little bit of a breath and movement practice if you're up for
Yeah,
it.
let's do it. Let's do it. I'd love to. Yeah.
All right. Well, push yourself back a little bit if you're at your desk or a table.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're driving, hit pause and do this when you pull over.
That's right. Yeah. Don't do this.
Uh, Right. All right. So find your feet connected to the earth. Rub your hands together. Take your hands, feel the friction in your hands, and notice one place in your body that might need a little support right now. Might be feeling a little tight or sore or angry or whatever it is, maybe tired. And take your hands and put them wherever you want to bring some healing energy to yourself. And breathe in through your nose. And breathe out through your mouth or through your nose. And do that again. A big breath in. You may want to move your hands to somewhere else as you breathe out. Relax your shoulders. Take another big breath in. Hold it there for a moment. Notice the feeling of full. And then let the breath out nice and slow. Notice the feeling of empty. Let your arms come down by your sides. And then as you breathe in, let your arms raise out and up overhead. Stretch and lift. And when you breathe out, bring your hands together and bring them right down the midline of your body towards your chest. And let's do that one more time. Big breath in, reach the arms out. Lift up. Bring your hands down. Now let your palms touch right in front of your heart. Take a big breath in. As you breathe out, notice how you feel. Yeah. And when you're ready, open your eyes.
That's great. I feel so good. I appreciate that. It's such a good reminder to have it done to you when you do it with other people. Yeah. I mean, it just gets you so reset. Your, vagal nerve. I mean, all of those things are so mistreated in our culture with information and screens and time and information exchange.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
here's to more feeling and breathing in 26.
That's right. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. We'll link everything that she has in her show notes. Those that listen to me all the time, I don't have people on here that I don't like their stuff. So check out her book, order that. Can they get that on Amazon? Is that where you primarily order
That's
from?
probably the easiest place to find it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, y'all check it out on Amazon. I'll put that link in the show notes. And God bless you guys and have a good year.